Hello, friends, and welcome to another weekly garden walk and talk tour. So, we're starting off in the vegetable garden here where the raised beds are. I recently harvested the garlic and the onions, and so that bed has got some bamboo canes that we've cut out and we're drying out. So, our bamboo, we have to be very diligent about making sure to cut off any canes that are growing outside where we've trimmed it off. Speaking of trimming, we finally trimmed off the hedge that had overgrown on this side of the garden. And basically, this needs to have a lot of work. And this is step one in renovating this particular section. So we've cut it back completely. So we're getting more light onto one of the larger raised beds. And in other news, the sweet peas, I'm still waiting on the garden netting to protect it from the pigeon damage that they've been suffering. Basically, yeah, it's been quite a thing. And so I went into the basement to find some old CDs, and I had a bit of this agrimesh lying around, and we've strung up some sort of a defense because the peas are beginning to flower now, and we really do need to protect those leaves. But I'm hoping that the netting will arrive some point this week and we can construct some proper covering for it. So the sweet peas, the mange too, are doing really well. The dwarf French beans are coming along at a slower pace than the sweet peas, but that's okay. It means that we will have successive harvesting. Ever since we set up this larger, more space for the purple sprouting broccoli and the kale, they've just been growing madly, and it's been satisfying to see. The shallots are coming along and bulbing nicely. These should be ready to harvest in another couple of weeks or so, and these will be great in salads. And once they come out, it will give more space to the courgette plant here, which has already started forming some courgettes. And this is a really great one. It's ambassador. It will keep on fruiting all the way through to September or October at the latest. The marigolds are beginning to come along as well, which is really quite nice. And I've removed the chives that were in the corner of this bed. They were just really huge and had taken over, and so I dug them up. I'm not a big fan of chives personally. We don't actually use them that much, and I do have chives in other parts of the garden that are in more smaller manageable quantities. The cucumbers, they seem to be slow going, so I'm gonna need to do something about that. So I'm thinking of adding a bottle like what I've done here for the butternut squash, so that the water is directed straight to the roots. And that seems to have revived this butternut squash plant that I thought was dying off, but since I started doing this with it, there's loads more of new growth, so it's clearly a very hungry plant. The marigolds, again, they're coming really well, which are great to interplant with any sort of vegetables because they're very good at repelling pests and insects. Not the big ones like pigeons and squirrels, unfortunately, but the smaller ones, they will work. Same with the sweet peas. We needed to protect the runner beans from the pigeons. So this is only a temporary structure at the moment, but we do have the netting that we're going to cover over that should be coming in the post. The carrots are coming along, and the little pansy seeds, these must have been sent over by the wind because it's just really wonderful to see these little flowers growing in and amongst the carrots, which should be ready in another 3 to 4 weeks or so. And in other news, the Zepherine Drouhin climber is just going really beautifully with the repeat flowers coming out, and I am so glad that I've been taking care of it, as well as the clematis, which has been benefiting from the extra TLC that I've been given to the soil around the rows. It has also been benefiting, and I never knew that a clematis could have that many flowers. It's been the best that I've had so far. And a couple of weeks ago, this stem had 0 shoots on it, but now it's getting covered over completely in shoots. And so one of the things that my husband has done is to put this sort of makeshift raised bed around it, which allows the water to stay a bit longer because this area sort of slopes down. So we need to build something a bit more permanent. But for now, this is working, and it's really good knowing that I don't have to dig up this rose and give up on it. I just need to work on it some more. Now, I have no idea what this particular clematis variety is. I bought it from Wilco's several years ago, and I actually thought it had died off, but it's one of those that completely dies, covers itself under the ground, and then it sends out new shoots. But I'll try and investigate what the name is. The nasturtium, absolutely going mental. It's just come along so big, and I'm not cutting it off because this section is a little bit ugly, and at the moment we have an invasion of about 12 of these caterpillars, and they have just been eating up. You can see those umbrella leaves have been completely chewed down, and there's loads of like little droplets of caterpillar poop all around. So nasturtium is another great plant to grow around your vegetables because it will attract the pests. So the caterpillars would go for this rather than say your cabbages or your brassicas, but those are basically butterflies in the making. The shrub rose, the shrub pink rose, is just really doing well with the mulching and the watering, and it has these gigantic glossy green leaves that I love. It has a very traditional old rose feel to it. Like if you've ever seen those old Victorian cards, it's got that feel, and I absolutely love how it is flowering along, and I'm just constantly making sure that it is fed, it is watered, and it is mulched. The mum in a million isn't doing as great as I would have liked, but I'm gonna keep an eye on it. The campanula is just, frankly speaking, taking over this entire space. And I think for next year, I will need to move some clumps around and see what's what. But it's a really beautiful color and a lot of lovely interest. Now, I have a new rose here that I dug in and I planted in, and it's called Ferdinand Pichard. It's an old rose from 1910, and it is a beautiful shrub rose. The colors on it, it's a mixed color, which is like a light pink and a bright pink, and it has these leaves that are matte. It's not glossy, so the light doesn't bounce out, and it's just such a beautiful rose. And next to it, there's this Japanese anemone that are getting ready to fluff up, and I have a really old hydrangea bush that needs to be renovated and it needs to be moved. But I have big plans for this section, which involve moving the path, and hopefully I'll get that done this winter. But this beautiful Floribunda rose is just, it's coming along so lovely with these really bright red flowers, but unfortunately it doesn't have a lot of fragrance to it, because each time I see it I just want to sniff it, because that's my instinct when it comes to roses, but it doesn't have a fragrance, and I do think it's such a shame. Now, this came with the house, it was already in the garden, so I don't know what it is called, and if I had to replace it or to buy a red rose, I'd definitely be looking for one that has a fragrance with it. But you can see there the Japanese anemone, the buds are beginning to form. Japanese anemones are really great perennials because they die right back down, and then come summer they just shoot up again. I found this interesting little flower buried amongst the Japanese anemone. I have no idea what it is, and this is the first year that I've actually noticed it, so I'll need to do some investigations. This is the outdoor dining area that I've been working on sort of creating so that when the weather is good, we can sit and eat outdoors. So I cleared off, there was some crochisma growing from between that crevasse, and so I cut all of that down to try and make space. And then I planted a new rose to me, which is called Ghislaine de Feligonde, and it's an old rose from 1875. It's a climber, and the idea is that it's supposed to cover over all those ugly wires. It will grow up to about 12 feet against the wall, and it's a really beautiful fragrance, and it's almost thornless. This is the barbecue, and I've just been working on tidying up around this area because normally it is like our garage. Across from where the dining room, the outdoor dining room area is the Madame Alfred Carrier, as well as a clematis, which I don't know what the name of this one is, but it's a really deep purple, and it also has mixes of green in it. I really love the color on it, but it needs a bit of white to really get the color to pop, but it's coming along very, very slowly. I think a gardener's work is never done, really. You have to just be constantly moving things about and puttering around. Oh, and those are the onions and the garlic that I harvested from the raised gardens. But the Ghislaine de Feligonde is a really beautiful rose. It's got this white color, and it's virtually thornless, which is why it's great for any seated areas, because you don't have to worry about the thorns catching people's clothes or people's hair. And I have it in this pot, so fingers crossed it will go well. The first of my dahlias has actually bloomed, and it's this yellow dinner plate variety, which has a really lovely mango smell, and the kids absolutely love it. So somehow it has managed to survive me not looking after them really well, because this is my first year growing dahlias, and so we're kind of coming along with that. The hosta flower spikes are in full bloom, and they're very beautiful, and I have some hardy fuchsia budding over there. Still have some of this white iris, which is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to get more of these in the next year because they're just gorgeous. The yellow courgette, Jolant I think is called, is coming along beautifully. We already have some fruit that are beginning to fatten up. It is a very thirsty plant, and it does require watering, so I've had to put a catcher underneath it so that the water isn't just running through. But I'm looking forward to trying out these yellow courgettes. The marigolds are all coming into full bloom now, which is really beautiful. And another yellow that's coming into full bloom is the first bloom on the golden showers climbing rose. I was so happy to see this because I had very nearly given up on this rose, but it turns out watering and mulching, and I'll say it again, watering and mulching for roses is absolutely essential, particularly to get them established. So it's a beautiful yellow, and I look forward to seeing more yellow blooms in it as I begin to look after it more properly. And I'm showing you over there the hardy geraniums. They're still flowering with the pink, and it's a lovely thing because they just keep on coming back. Our pond, you can see the lilies have come up to the surface now, and I'm hoping in a few weeks we'll have the lovely pink pond lilies blooming, and those are just such a treat to see. Over on the south borders, there's just a lot of, it's a bit of a hot mess. Aside from this Ivan geranium, which is really popping against the new green of the turf that I laid out about 4 weeks ago now, which is really grown, and it will be ready for mowing now. Things are not going too well in this particular section, so it does need a bit, it's something that I've got in the back burner of my mind, thinking about how I can work on this section, particularly during this season. It was fine in the spring with the bearded irises, but there seems to be a gap that needs to be filled. The other side, however, is coming along beautifully. The looping is just gone mental, and then the Ivan is looking great against the foil of the white daisies. So white, purple, blue is sort of the color scheme that I'm trying to create in this particular area. So having those is working really well. My alliums, they still haven't bloomed yet. It's very painful to watch, but you can see the The astrantia here it starts off white, but then it goes into a lovely pinky color, and there's more daisies over there. The dahlias that are in this bed are coming along quite slowly, and I think that's because the weather hasn't been very consistently hot. So when it's been hot, they've shot up, and then they sort of slow down the moment the temperature comes back down a bit. But I love having more of these spots of white within amongst the purples, and I definitely need to be adding more like that. With regards to the fruits, the blueberries, we're getting a bumper harvest this year, and I managed to pick up this netting from B&M, and it's a cheap plastic netting which will probably last about 2 or 3 seasons, but we've used it to wrap around the blueberries so that the birds can't get to them first. I bought another rambling rose called City of Yoke, which has these lovely white flowers, and this is a vigorous rambler which I'm going to grow over this shed because the shed is quite ugly, and I'm just trying to find a way to prettify it. I do have several other plants that I bought, and so one of them is a second Zepherine Drouhin plant that I'm going to put on the other side of the trellis in the garden down there. And then I also found a Phyllis Bide, which is an old rambler rose that's going to go by my front door. And I also got an Iceberg climbing rose because it's been well reviewed for its lovely white blooms. The other thing that I got to interplant as a companion plant is the salvia underneath the shrub roses, and that has to go in. And I also have the Rector rambling rose here, and that's another lovely old rose, and I'm going to plant this next to our big tree so that it can go up a tree because it's supposed to be very vigorous and can cover an entire tree. So I'm very excited about planting out those new roses that I bought. My tower lilies haven't blossomed or bloomed yet, so I'm watching those avidly, and once they bloom I'll move them over to the patio side where I'll be able to see them more regularly, because this section is a little bit of the garage section. I only see it when I actually come out of the house versus the patio that I can see through the window. The strawberries are coming along quite nicely. They're not as fat as last year, and that's because it's been a little bit drier and it hasn't been as warm as it was last year, but it's still a little bit better than nothing. The mauve's ball is still going strong. It just repeat flowers throughout the season, and I need to buy more of these to put them around the gardens because I do like the color there. The purple, which is one of the main colors that I do go for. And I have another supernova clematis that is growing over here, and this little clematis is becoming my favorite because I just love how the white centers make the purple really pop, and you can see how it just looks amazing there with the green leaves against the brick wall. Sadly, my giant poppy is dying off without blooming. That's made me a little bit sad, but that's okay. The sweet peas, the dwarf sweet peas, are coming along nicely, as is the echinacea and the fuchsia that I planted down. So this is a lot of greenery at the moment. I would love to have more color, and that's something that I need to work on. I do have these irises that I planted out in February as corms, and they are so beautiful, but they are blooming at the wrong time. I didn't realize they were summer blooming because when I planted them, I actually thought that they would bloom at the same time as the other flowers that I had in this pot, but it's still a lovely sight. It's the bright purple, and yeah, really quite lovely, but paying more attention to when things bloom is probably something that I need to work on. The Zephyrin Drouhin that has been struggling by my front door needs to be replaced with the Phyllis Bide, and that's something that I'm going to hopefully get done sooner rather than later. And over on this other side, so this is the west facing side, I've planted a second Ghislaine de Feligonde. And the idea is that this will go up here, and it seems to be doing quite well so far. There's been a lot of blooms, and you can see there I'm deadheading them, and I hope that within about 3 years it will grow to its 12 feet along this side, mixing in with the clematis there. That's all I have for the weekly garden walk and talk. Thank you so much for joining me in this, and until I see you next time, I wish you blue skies, health and happiness. Bye.